Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode on Spirit Reflections Around the Fire. My name is Fred Govea, and tonight we have a wonderful guest, Rabbi Nilton Bonder. And he's not only a prominent spiritual leader, but also a celebrated author known for weaving together ancient wisdom and contemporary reflections in a way that speaks deeply to our times. He leads the Congregação Judaica do Brasil in Rio de Janeiro and has written numerous books that explore spirituality, ethics, and the human experience. His latest work, Wedding at the Graveyard, invites us into a profound exploration of life's paradoxes, love, loss, endings, and new beginnings, and the transformative power that emerges from embracing them, and about the fantastical and the supernatural as well. We had the opportunity to speak with him back in 2020, in the beginning of the pandemic, about the documentary Immoral Soul, based on one of his earlier books. This documentary is extraordinary. It's beautiful. It's about an hour and a half long, but it took me 5 hours to watch because I had to pause and had these epiphanies and insights and had these conversations around what it provokes. So I highly recommend it. Both the conversation we had around the fire and the documentary link can be found in the description below. Rabbi Bonder, it is a true honor and a pleasure to have you back around the fire. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Fred, for having me. And I feel very much around the fire here because there's thunders all over Rio de Janeiro right now.
Oh boy! Let's hope the connection cooperates for you to stay connected here with us. So, I'm gonna start by actually reading the complete title of your latest book, "Wedding at the Graveyard," and other tales of the Jewish fantastical. Let's start with that. What is the Jewish fantastical?
Well, there is in Jewish tradition, there's a lot of what we could call things that are closer to superstition, to several paranormal experiences that were brought in literature, in Jewish literature, from ancient times, and particularly through, let's say, the last 2 centuries with Hasidic writing, where they had a lot of talking about experiences of people being taken by spirits, all sorts of different tellings about
We seem to have a connection issue going on here. Nilton did warn us that there's a lot of thunderstorms right now happening in Rio where he is. So this may be the reason why he's frozen. Let's give it a few moments and hopefully his connection will be restored. While we wait for that to happen, I highly recommend for those that are watching to click the link in the description of the video for the documentary Immoral Soul, based on one of his earlier books. This documentary was basically Nilton traveling the world and interviewing leaders in Judaism who are considered by their own tribe and community as what he calls transgressors, meaning people that went beyond the boundaries of the accepted, the norm, and actually broke many of the rules and were actually expelled and excluded from the tribe. But in this movement, they actually built bridges, and afterwards they walked back and invited the community to expand as a result of this movement. And it's a very, very beautiful and thought-provoking documentary. He brings to light a lot of the Old Testament passages and modern life reflections and things that we struggle through on a daily basis. And the fact that it premiered a few weeks after the pandemic began was even more powerful because we were stuck at home, and I remember it was the first time that I had a connection with Nilton and his work. And after that, I reached out to him and wanted to interview him. So that conversation around the fire is also in the description of the video. And I believe he's back here with us.
I am.
You are back.
I am back. Sorry, there was
Problem.
a problem with the light went on off, and but here I am. So I
You
was
made
telling
it.
you that there is a tradition of telling about different experiences that people could not explain, and rabbis would talk about. One of them became a very well-known theater piece called Dibuk, which is about a spirit that takes, it cannot leave this world and has to be pushed away. There was this whole drama about, a couple that loved each other, and there was some entanglement. So we have this kind of stories within the Jewish tradition. What brought me to this interest of writing about this, because this is not very normative in Judaism. Judaism, doesn't usually talk directly about this kind of things, even though you have a very deep mystical tradition of Kabbalah, and the rabbis in the past used to talk about, mystical stuff. But this came from a very practical, daily experience that I had as a rabbi. I've been a rabbi already almost like 40 years now. I was ordained in New York, studied in
Nice.
New York. Then I came to Brazil, and since basically 1985, I've been working in Brazil as a rabbi. And I did experience a lot of situations that were somehow bizarre or strange, where things that were not considered normal would happen, would be, and I collected them, and I felt like writing about this, bringing this as
So,
sort of a fiction.
so these are like anecdotal tales of everyday people that you help to counsel through your role as rabbi, and you sort of collected them and you shared them in the book. I guess using pseudonyms and fake names to protect their privacy, hopefully, right?
I
I
did.
see.
I did for most of them. Just a couple of them that I know very well, and I used just for my own sake of relating to the characters. So what I do is a very interesting thing. They are all true stories, but I don't tell them like stories. I fictionalize them, not changing the what happened, but the surrounding. I always give it a context, and the context has to do with the experience that I was having, because this is what the book is. In Portuguese, we decided in English to use the title of one of the stories, which is this wedding at the graveyard.
Uh,
But in Brazil, I
that
have it with
actually
me.
took place. A wedding actually took place at a graveyard.
Oh yes, it did. It did. I'll tell you a little about
So it's
that.
so funny you mentioned that because when my mother saw the title of our conversation and she's like, "My God, who would do a wedding at a graveyard? What a spooky book that must be!" I'm like, and I was just like, "Please, Mom, don't take things literally. This is symbolic. No, it actually took place. Now I stand corrected."
It is not symbolic at all, and I'll let you know exactly what kind of a wedding it
Wow.
was. Yes, and this is
Okay.
this is what I bring in the book, because the book is more about the human being. Human being is the one that really creates this very like deep narrative concerning life, where life has a texture, a very special texture. It's not something that just a description, that you see something and this is the narrative. You see things happens in your life. They happen with a texture. And, in Portuguese, I have the book here. In Portuguese, it is called, uh, here, Zona Crepuscular, which is the
Like the
literal
Twilight Zone, right?
Twilight Zone, exactly. And
Right.
I at the introduction, I say that when I was a child, I loved watching the series, Twilight Zone, or the ones that are, were around the 60s. And I'm pretty sure they had reruns of Twilight Zone many
Yep.
times. But uh, uh, during the 60s, when we had our black and white TVs, and to watch this series that was about paranormal, fantastical stories, and all very like real, sort of real stories that would happen, and like an accident would happen, and there would be some strange situation, a communication with a dead person, things like that.
Right.
And when I was a child, for me, I was very touched with this, uh, felt, in part, it felt like an imaginary kind of uh, storytelling and very real at the same time.
Right.
And so when I was thinking about all the situations that I experienced, situations where, it comes from the human beings, the situation that human beings create. I was thinking about this, that there is a certain area of our lives that it is like a twilight zone. When the sun is setting, you know, there is this kind of light, non-light, light and darkness at the same time. And they sort of uh, mix together in a very special way. You cannot say that it's dark. You cannot
Right.
say that is bright at the same time.
True.
So my recollection of all those stories, there was one line of thinking that it really happened. It was just like I had it in my memory. And there was a second kind of narrative that was saying, maybe it wasn't just like that. Maybe I was, bringing other stuff, and I was creating this sort of magical environment, around the story. Maybe it had to do with my moment, how I was feeling at that moment, what I was going through at that moment. So I love that, because people usually think that there's only two ways: either it's real or it's fake.
Right.
And we have something, that human beings experience, that is called experience. And experience is always real, even
Right.
though it might not be exactly what other people would be seeing at the same time or experiencing
Right.
at the same time. So we usually, to make something real, what do you do? When something spooky happens, the first thing you want to do is to call somebody else to witness, to share with you that
True.
moment, because you want to check: am I going crazy? Is
Right.
this delirious? How can I, deal with the fact that my senses are seeing or feeling something, but I myself don't believe what I'm seeing?
Right.
So, so I really wanted to write about this, about this twilight zone of our lives. And everybody has, since I wrote the book, I bump into all sorts of people that read the book, and they say, I have one story to tell you about my aunt or about whoever that they experienced, because we all have.
Yeah.
Because
It's
I think
universal.
it is universal, and it's a kind of way in which we live our lives. Our conscious sort of register different situations that we sometimes feel, oh, this is strange. This is not normal. And and then you either develop that, you go with the flow, and you experience something that becomes a story in your life, or you might just sort of wake up from this and turn to something else. But you had a sense that something, it's either a synchronicity, thinking about somebody and just bumping into them, anything that creates a feeling of some sort of a magical surrounding around you, not the normal,
Right.
normality.
It's funny because you're bringing up in me this very funny paradox. I come from a tradition of studying spiritism for over 20 years, where we deal with the paranormal and the supernatural and spirits and mediumship and extrasensory perceptions all the time. We study it, we practice it, we have it in our centers. But I have never seen a spirit with my own eyes. And I know that if I ever do, I will freak out, and I will try as much as possible to rationalize away that what I saw was an illusion or something. I know that I just have that fear in me. So I think that comes from our human desire to make sense of the world, and not, in my case at least, not go off into the deep end, and before you know it, you're not going to be able to come back mentally,
I think it comes also from the fact, because I don't go, because this is not within Jewish tradition. Jewish tradition doesn't talk about the dead. We talk very much about life, and it's very grounded. Even though we do have beliefs that about reincarnation, we do have beliefs about the afterlife, but we usually don't speculate about that, and we don't sort of deal with that. This is
right.
This is part of the world, and we have to deal with this being incarnated. This is our function right now,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so I'm saying what is the Jewish, let's say, discourse,
Perspective. Yeah.
yeah, a perspective discourse, or sometimes even the poetry, because a lot of this is a way of presenting the world. And sometimes we have to talk about the world as being magical, because
Mm-hmm.
it is. Our
Yeah.
experience of the world, just having a consciousness of being awakened, or sometimes by being awakened, knowing that we probably are asleep in so many other dimensions.
Yes,
This
like
is what.
living a dream within a dream type of a situation, right?
Yes, because if you can have, there was this beautiful story of this Hasidic story when this rabbi, his son, wakes up during the night, and he comes to his father. He probably had a dream, and he comes to his father and said, "Father, if we are awake from sleeping, can we be awake from being awake?"
Wow, deep.
Because this is true. If you can come out of a reality that you were having in your dreams and wake up, can you wake up from being awake?
Yep.
Um, and the answer is probably yes. You can be more awake than you are. And if you are more
Indeed.
awake, what would you see? What would you experience? So I think by having a consciousness, we have this question. We have this understanding that is not limited within what we see that reality plays. And we have this very interesting thing that we live in our lives, inner lives. We live
Right.
in this very fantastical world. We imagine things. We can do magical things. We can jump from one thing to another place to another. We have this, we have in our dreams, we experience time in a very different way. And we encounter people that are not alive anymore. Our memories are very alive, and we experience them. It's not just like a background film or photos in the back of our minds. The people that really reverberate within us because they touched
Yeah,
us, because they live on us. And
true.
you can bring this to a very extreme and radical, say they live like their spirit is still alive, or you just can say that in a very human way, they cohabitate our memory, our consciousness. They're with us. We talk with them. We talk with ourselves. We talk with
Yeah,
God. Uh, is that real? You see, for us,
that
uh, it's a
go ahead.
twilight zone. It's not real. Like somebody else, if somebody comes and says, "What are you doing?" I'm talking to God. They're gonna say, "Okay, this guy is cuckoo," you know. But I know within myself that I'm going through a very deep moment. I am talking to God, and this is sort of real, sort of poetry. It doesn't have to be proved in a lab.
Exactly. Well, it's
So
like for me, the music comes for that, the violin playing. When I'm playing violin, and then sometimes I will practice my repertoire for 2 hours, and I won't even realize that 2 hours have gone by. The only thing that makes me realize is I start getting a little bit of shoulder pain, and I have to stop. But during that 2 hours, I'm in such a zone of abstract reality that I'm experiencing, that thoughts are running through my mind, feelings, emotions, flashes from the past, things that I should have done and I didn't do, things that I wanted to come out differently, it didn't come out, all while I'm also playing the music and experiencing the emotions of the music. And that's, if you were to be watching me do that, you'd never tell that there's a lot of those layers of reality going on in my experience, but that's what I'm experiencing, right?
and this is something interesting that in Jewish tradition they make a distinction about reality and truth, because we usually use the word reality to explain what is. But
Mm.
in this concept, reality is not what is in absolute terms. Reality is what is what it is now.
Right.
You're dealing with a reality, but reality can change. We live in this world, and we say every day the sun rises. You know, it wasn't like that all the time.
Right.
So so this is not true. This is reality as it is now, and we are immersed in this kind of you know repetition kind of events, and we call this reality. But there is something, and it's very interesting that for Jewish tradition, when you talk about death, you use the word emet. Emet means true, the truth.
Oh,
So the reality of death is not reality. When you're dead, you're not experiencing this reality, you're experiencing truth.
so emet literally means truth,
Truth, yes. It's
and
a very
that's the
important,
word for death.
no, it's the word that we use for when we're talking about that. You know,
Oh, wow.
in truth, it's a very special word because it has the first, the last, and the middle letter of the Jewish alphabet.
Wow.
So it's like like the whole thing,
Right. Alpha, omega, beginning, end.
and middle, and the middle, and but when if you go to a cemetery in Jewish tradition, you see all over their prayers are talking about Emet, the God, Dayan Emet. God is the judge of truth, and this is
Mm.
the let's say the metaphor for the world of the dead. The dead are not in reality; they are in Emet. They are in truth,
Wow. That is
which is
really powerful.
it is like like uh, the uh, reality is just a stage, and Emet is the background, sort of that reality. But in the book, what I found very interesting is that uh, many of the situations were people coming for counseling, you know, or situations that happened, you know, that I was able to uh, experience. I had one story that I tell about being, I had to work when I was in New York, the Jewish Theological Seminary, which is located on 122nd Street and Broadway, has this very old building, and they had an old uh, library. And when I arrived in New York, I started working at the library. And because I spoke Portuguese, Spanish, they asked me to organize the Spanish manuscript archives that they had. They had actually what they had was like they used to buy a lot of, or to get it, you know, people would die and they
We
would
donate.
donate, or people would go into auctions and buy, they wanted to buy books, and they had to buy a whole lot of books. And with the books came other documents. And so this library had a rare book room where they had all the manuscripts that were like most of the most you know, value and rare manuscripts. And they had a bunch of things that came with those, you know, with those lots of Spanish and Portuguese old scripts.
Just random texts.
Yeah, random text that they didn't know if there was anything that was related, because there was a Jewish library, and they wanted me to
Right.
go through and to create a file with, and see what would be correlated, because there were a lot of Inquisition kind of documents.
Wow.
Very interesting. Inquisition, the autos of Inquisition
Yes.
are very interesting. I recommend anybody that has the chance to read them, because it's like reading a soap opera. Uh,
Really.
yeah, because what it is like they created a culture of denouncing people. You know,
Right.
they created, because there was this discrimination against not only Jews but, you know, other traditions, whatever. So when you read the autos of Inquisition, you would see uh, such and such person who is a shoemaker denounces this other person, such and such person, of Judaizing, or or witchery, you know, of doing something condemned like the church. And when you read further down, that other person was also a shoemaker. So you could really
Wow.
sense that, you know, competition was you know, was on the way of people denouncing the others. And it's
Right.
very interesting to sort of recreate the reality that people were living at that time. But I had a very strange experience in that library, because I was left alone. They had this area had very valuable manuscripts, and in the 60s they had a very bad fire at the library,
Oh.
and because and it's interesting, what destroyed most of the books was not the fire, but was the water by the firemen.
Oh.
So they had to create this whole system of chemicals that would sort of, you know, put down the fire without having to use water or anything like that to save the manuscripts. So I had to be in this room that they had to lock because it was very valuable. And I also had this information that if something went wrong, if the alarm would start ringing, I had like 2 minutes to leave the room, because all the chemicals would come out
Oh
and
my
try.
God.
Yeah. So it was, I think, so I tell the story, bring this texture of tension, of being in this
Right.
very lonely in this tower at the Jewish Theological Seminary, locked in it, with the danger of a fire starting any moment, having 2 minutes to
Wow.
run away, surrounded by texts, many of them written down because before the press, and this created a certain environment, you know. And it happened that one day, I tell the story, and it was very interesting because I was reading a Portuguese manuscript from a priest, and it was a very sexual book. You know, I even thought, that was back in the early '80s. I really thought of selling this piece to Playboy magazine, because this priest was from the 14th century.
Oh
Was
my
talk-
God.
Yes, it was a very interesting manuscript about this priest condemning this very luxurious woman because of her behavior, but describing it in detail in a very
And, fantasizing as much as he could, right?
totally. You could see what was happening there. And I
Wow.
I was reading this, and it was funny because it's like old Portuguese, and the way it was expressed, and all the psychology behind this piece, this manuscript was unbelievable. But one day I'm there, and when I tried to reach for this manuscript, I touched something that was very strange, and I could. At the first moment, it felt like a very, different kind of texture that I was touching. And when I looked, I saw something, a green sort of material, and it was so real to me that I looked like one of those cartoons, where your hair goes
Right.
up, and there was a whole story there.
So
Uh,
do you feel it was like a spirit entity that you saw, you touched?
to me, it was like I was touching something like ectoplasm,
Okay.
some sort of strange, very. It was like it was a glowing green thing that
Energy.
at the
Wow.
very beginning I touched, and it was felt like like plastic or something, but it was glowing, and I
Wow.
saw it, and I looked for a while, and I was freaked out because it felt like something from another world. And I'm in this very, very, very sort of, mysterious place, and everything sort of added to the experience. And I ran, and the story I tell, this whole whatever happens there, and people can read it there. But I
Sure.
had many experiences like that. I had, once a child that came from a bar mitzvah, and the parents come to my office, and they tell me, "Oh, we have a problem with our child. We don't know what to do with him. He's gonna be a bar mitzvah in a few months, but he's undergoing a lot of problems, and we think he has a poltergeist sort of situation happening to him." And I was like, how come? I was very dismissing at the first moment. But then the child comes in, and I see this child that has the most, sad and heavy spirit kind of child, not talking to me. And while we were talking, and I'm trying to make him, have a conversation with me, I can see that my diplomas that were hanging in the wall, they all cracked at once in front of me with this child there. And that was the complaint of the parents, that the child was, everything in the house was breaking, glasses were breaking, bulbs were exploding.
Right.
And so I tell, this is the reality of, I'm trying to deal with, there's a child in front of me wanting to do a bar mitzvah, and I don't want to jump into crazy perspectives of what's happening to this child. At the same time, I'm thinking this child needs a a very good therapy, and
Right.
somebody to look after.
Exorcism or something.
Yeah, but before exorcism, you think about the real things. It's just maybe a
Of course.
childhood of love problems. You don't want to
Right.
rush and open doors to the other
To the
world, when
paranormal.
it
Right.
could be something of this world. Uh,
Well, but
so
what can you explain from this world that cracked all of your diplomas?
no, I can't. But at
Exactly.
the same time, in each story, I search for the context, because this is not something that happened out of the blue. It's not just a child comes and it happens. No, the
Right.
parents came before. They told me the story. I didn't believe. Then I had the child come in, and so there is this whole involvement that is part of this event.
Right.
So this is what I do in every single story. I try to sort of bring the elements that are playing there, that would create this type of experience. And I'm not taking it to just, okay, this child is able to break glasses or mirrors,
Right.
whatever. There is
And it
something going on
sounds
there.
and it sounds to me like in all of the stories of the book, you're not searching for an explanation
No,
necessarily.
the explanation is already given to me because I experienced it. So
There you go.
by explanation, I think what bothers most is not what causes that. What kind of force breaks your diplomas? The glass. You know, uh, the question is that real? Is that happening, or is that imagination? Is us humans, joining in this perspective of the parents? Did the parents influence me to see something, to believe in something? Uh, but I did see
Gotcha.
the glass breaking, and I have to
So
deal with that.
it's almost like by setting up the elements and the context of the story in your book, you're leading us to understand that you experienced what you experienced because of the elements and the context and the preparation around it that may have influenced you to have that experience, that perspective, that story, right?
Exactly, because this it really explains to me what happened. I don't have to know what happened in terms of energy, or how you can send energy to break things. Now, this is up to more like the scientists or whoever wants to deal with how those situations or powers can happen. What I want to fit together is, how do I make that experience real? How do I create the conditions to see what I saw without falling either in the magical category of just saying, I saw something magical and I believe in magic now from now on. Uh, but also, I don't want to dismiss it because I saw it, I experienced it. So I want to put everything together and sort of create a twilight zone, because it's not daylight experience and it's dark.
I
It's not
see.
dark experience. It's this middle
It's not
ground.
paranormal or normal, it's in between, right?
Is in between, because I experience it and makes it real, and I tie together. The twilight zone is within me, is in my experience. That's where things happened, and I'm describing from that perspective. So I don't want
Gotcha.
to know from the perspective of, it didn't happen, this is not possible. And I don't want to know from the perspective of the magical. Oh, it is like that. It happens all the time. This is what happens around us. But I don't want to buy any of those narratives, because I want to buy the narrative that I was involved, which was I was there and I experienced it within that context.
So this perspective you offer in the book, you don't want to go into the magical and you don't want to go into the other filters.
Uh,
How much of that comes from your faith as a rabbi and your sort of upbringing and your instructions as a rabbi? How much is it connected to that?
I think it is connected in many ways. I have a degree in engineering, and I became a rabbi. So I have this kind of bridging, a life that is very a right hemisphere uh,
Analytical,
directed,
yeah.
and another comes from this left hemisphere, and I make bridges all the time. So for me, it was somehow very very natural to try and tie the two together, not having to migrate to any of those sites and buying into a perspective that has to be either way, either it's right and real or it is fake.
Right.
I think
And
it's
and back to what you said, real is not the same as true.
exactly exactly. And what is interesting, and people create that because the title of the book is about a real story of a woman that calls me and tells me, Rabbi, would you do a wedding for me? And by the question, I already sense that there's something coming because you don't ask a priest or a rabbi, would you do a? For sure, I would do. There must be some problem. Maybe it's a mixed marriage. Maybe there's some kind of problem that that's why they're asking. And
Right.
then she brings me this thing. She asked me if I would do a wedding of a living person with a person that had already passed away. And this is the drama of that story. There is a reality, and this wedding took place.
With
In
witnesses, with other people present.
There were 10 people there. It's a very interesting story from all the rabbinic legal perspective to do this, and, and
Right.
and the reason why she needed this wedding. But it was done, and that was a situation that was very interesting because it was coming from uh, the human mind. It was this woman that had this need to perform this wedding, and by connecting two different worlds, she created a lot of legal problems for me. How can I
Right.
do how can I do a wedding without the consent of the other one? How do I get the consent of the other? Maybe he didn't want to get married, and I would start a whole legal,
Right.
situation with the other world, you know.
Wow.
But it's a beautiful story of that brings the human side and how the human can relate to things that are not objective, but are very real, are very important, very relevant to our lives. And most of the stories are just very human. And I think the book comes, it's a very sort of humorous book too, because when you're talking about human beings, there's always a sort of humor or ridiculous kind of
Right. Well,
side.
and there's a certain sense of humor that the Jews are known for, that which is satire, wit, which is hilarious, which is making tragic comedy and making light of very atrocious, sad events. There, you are known for that, which is it's a very enjoyable type of humor. And you've been honing in that trait for many generations. It's, I guess, part of even the way you cope, the way you survive through experience, right?
And believe me, when you're dealing with the paranormal, humor is also one way of dealing with it. Because when you're
Yeah.
dealing with things that uh, that shake you, that somehow bring you to a situation where you're very it's very intense because you're you're feeling that your own mind is being put at a test at that moment.
Right.
And so humor helps, helps because um it takes away a little of somehow of some of the tension of
Yeah.
the
It lightens the load.
yes, exactly.
Lightens the
uh,
load. There's a story. I live right by the Twin Towers here in New York, and a friend of my mother's used to work in one of the towers in the bank. This is a fantastical story that I'm sure it's very much in line with the stories in your book, Newton. And when the first plane hit, she began to evacuate with everybody in her office. And as she was making her way down and she arrived in the street and began to walk, she had polio in one of her legs. So she had that machine that helped her to walk. But in the middle of the street, suddenly it malfunctioned and she was stuck. And she began to panic because everyone was running for cover, and they were all running towards the Jersey Shore to get on the ferries and cross safely. And she just became desperate. She couldn't move. She couldn't move. And she said that out of the blue, a very tall black man, very strong, just picked her up and carried her all the way to the ferry. And the minute that he dropped her onto the ferry, she immediately turned around to thank him, and there was nobody there. She never saw that man again. He vanished completely, like in an instant. And she says to this day, she tries to rationalize. She tries to explain what happened. She can't find a reason. You know, it's real. It happened with her, but it is something very supernatural, like from the way
yeah,
she tells it.
and you see in a story like that, you want to put together the facts. Like she got it to the ferry, so
Right?
something happened. And
Yeah.
and where is the person? Where is so uh, trying to fit that together is very disturbing
Yeah.
because you can create all sorts of hypotheses. You know, maybe there was somebody that did and just vanished because took her too long to look back, and
Right.
everybody was rushing. Maybe he rushed away and he was not there. Maybe
Right.
the adrenaline of that moment, she saw somebody that was not exactly the person that was there. There was so many possibilities that probably a rationalist would try to create, because you don't have
Exactly.
a black man coming up and holding you and saving you every moment of your needs, of your
Exactly.
um, but there's always this. There is so much fear. There is a life
Yeah.
and death situation. Strange things happen in the experience that people experience in moments like that. I have a very
Right.
funny story. When I was in New York, it's not in the book. When I was in New York, I had a light on my. I was living at the dorm at the university at that time, and it was the eve of a long weekend in New York. There was like a holiday tied to the weekend, and because I was a foreigner, I didn't have any place to go. I think it might have been um Thanksgiving or something like that. I stayed at the dorm, and I was by myself at the dorm. Everybody went to their homes, and I had this light in my table that had some trouble all the time. It was flicking, and I had to bump
Flickering.
flickering, and I was like bumping into it, and it would come back, and then again flickering, and then one moment I got a little nervous with this thing, and I banged it harder, and the light went off, and all the light of the dorm went off, and I was, oh my god, what did I do? There was some problem there, electric problem, and I did something really bad. So I went down the to the front of the building, and I went to the police that was, the security person that was there, and I said, oh, I had an electric problem with my light, and I think I made something that the whole building is the light went off. And he said, it's not only the building, look out. And I look at the street, and everything was dark. And I said, oh my God, what did I do? I created some big problem. And then it was one of the biggest blackouts that happened in the West Coast
Wow.
back in the 80s. There was like a famous one that everything went down. And for a few moments, I was feeling so guilty that I caused it. So,
That's so funny.
But when you put together, why would I make such a stupid connection that my electric problem in my door, in my room, would have created that? And it has to do with the fact I was by myself in this dorm that was totally abandoned. There were so many emotions that are building this magical texture that something could go strange. And I have this memory, and I couldn't believe it. The guy was telling me it was probably not you. It was not you that caused this, And it took me a while. And I was, it's like I had my own secret. Like, I can't tell anybody that I was the one that caused the big, blackout at the West Coast in the 80s, whatever.
But that's the magic. I think that's the magical thinking that all of us as children nurture normally, naturally, as children, and remnants of that stay with us as adults, right?
Many children tell stories that they know, they swear they experienced, and they're very paranormal, and some might be, or some might just be Twilight Zone kind of stories.
Right. Mixing, like exactly. I had never thought of it. I had never reflected on the title to mean that. Neither sunny nor dark, something in between.
And I tell, really cool. At the introduction, when I talk about the series, I tell about the fact that in Brazil, it would come out late at night. I think it was on a Friday night that they would show it on Brazilian TV, and they would have those, they would show like a slide before they would present the series from the what do you call the judge for minors in Brazil that gives permission, that creates the scale of age appropriation for appropriate age for children to watch TV. So it would say something like, from now on, call your parents. You're not allowed to look at this. So this mysterious moment. It's
like this program is rated R, rated PG-13, rated X, exactly, right? Viewer discretion advised, that kind of.
So I picture myself with this black and white TV getting that message. And my parents used to go out to do something, to a movie or something. And I was by myself with, somebody that took care of us. So there was this feeling of my parents are not at home. When are they coming back? This insecurity that children have. And I'm watching this program that I'm not supposed to really watch.
Like the prohibited,
and with the mysterious. And so this really got me to think that things go together, that a lot of our paranormal experiences, they are strange things that could be happening, but they need a perfect storm of emotional mindset, of a certain presence of yourself to be able to witness something, or to be sensible to something that Otherwise, you would not be. So
That
there is a
sometimes we
connection.
need sometimes we may need a little paranoia to experience the paranormal.
Yeah, or just an intensity, a moment of intensity that is out of the normal, of the routine,
Right.
and that create a perspective for you to see with a different texture the same reality, and
Right.
and intake something that happened that other people would look and say, ah, this is normal, but you see it at, oh, this is a sign, this is something that is telling me something, and it feels very real when you're experiencing.
Real. Well, this is a perfect example right here. I am sharing right now the screen of your book, Wedding at the Graveyard, and I have never seen a red filter the way the image is appearing right now. I'm trying everything to not have this filter, but it's happening. So is this real? Is this a malfunction? I don't know, but this is the cover of your book, Wedding at the Graveyard,
No, no,
and
no.
other
This
tales
is
of the.
this is the cover is just like that. It's this sort of is this there? Is it there or is it not there? There's an image behind.
Exactly, right?
Yes,
Ah, I see. Yes, I see. I now see the image is like a man and a woman, and she is resting her head kind of like on his shoulder, right?
exactly, exactly. And
Ah.
I haven't seen the book in my hands yet. It's already out in the States, but I haven't seen it. I'll be touring the U.S. In a couple of weeks, and I'm anxious to see how it looks in my hand.
In fact, for those that are going to be here in New York on April 23rd at the Brazilian Endowment for the Arts Library, here goes the red filter again. I've never seen this issue come up, but 6:30 p.m. on 52nd Street in Midtown Manhattan. Rabbi Nilton Bonder is going to be there talking about his book, signing the book, and having a conversation about it. I'm excited to check it out in person. And I also will be doing an event at that same place on May 15th about my documentary, Misha's Promise, the interview I had with Michelle Stievelman, who you know from Rio, who's already passed. And he shared a wonderful day with me, and I asked him a lot of philosophical questions about life, and so that'll be a fun night as well.
Oh, I'm looking forward to see it. Watch it. Is it going to be available?
I won't be able to broadcast the evening because there is no Wi-Fi connection there, as I understand. And I'm going to be screening the documentary to an audience and then talking about the film afterwards and then playing violin. So I think it'll be a
That's
little bit too much happening at the same time for me to be able to also broadcast on my channel, but I'll have some highlights up on my social media. Yeah.
wonderful. Wonderful.
Nilton, it's been very real talking to you. I know we've had this conversation for 58 minutes because I've experienced it. I don't know. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you sharing your wealth of wisdom, knowledge, wit around and experiences here around the fire and spirit reflections. And I look forward to giving you a hug on the 23rd here in New York
Thank you
in
so
person.
much, Fred. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you at the next episode around the Fire on Spirit Reflections, and check out the links in the description of the video of his documentary, Immoral Soul in English, which was my first experience of Newton's work back in the beginning of the pandemic, an amazing documentary, and the conversation that we had with him back in 2020, all in the description. Like, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next episode.